Hello team, welcome to another ATPGEO politics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a Ukraine war update extra video where I'm going to give you all the evidence we have of SPIDERWEB 2.0 taking place, and I'll explain what SPIDERWEB 2.0 is. There's been a lot of chatter in certain areas, including on my own channel, about this and about what might have happened, and yet we still don't have video evidence. And that leads me to think maybe it hasn't happened, but something has happened, but it could be some confusion lost in translation. So we're going to look at this in bit by bit. I'm going to present to you all the evidence that we do have for Operation SPIDERWEB happening. We're going to talk first of all about what it was and how the claim came about. So first of all, we heard a claim. So Operation SPIDERWEB, the original one, was drones coming out of containers whose roofs sort of moved back. The drones flew out and attacked 5 different air bases in this amazing mission. And then we had this claim that originated on the 7th of June, and it came from the Southern Defense Forces of Ukraine. So this is an official Ukrainian army account saying this, and it said operational information as of 8 o'clock on the 8 in the morning on the 7th of June 2025, the Defense Forces of Southern Ukraine hit a locomotive with a column of enemy equipment. The enemy's losses amounted to 13 tanks and more than 100 units of armored and automotive equipment. So the Ukrainians seem to have definitely claimed this. Is whether that wording is kind of what happened as we came to understand it after reading this. But I don't know the provenance of this claim. There are some saying that this was a Ukrainian claim originally that was picked up by Russian and then regurgitated back to Ukrainians. So it could be kind of psyops. It could be just someone making this up. I don't know the provenance of this. And there is no name at the top. It's cut off. So we should have some serious alarm bells going. And it's very easy to want to believe this stuff because you want this to be true, as indeed was my desire when I first read this, and it still is. Another unthinkable F-up by our special services. There is no point in remaining silent anymore. The enemy destroyed a locomotive with tanks and dozens of armoured vehicles. At some point, hatches through which grain is poured began to fly off from railway containers, such as hoppers, grain trucks, while they were moving. It was through them that the drones flew out and attacked the equipment that was located on the platform cars. What genius came up with the idea of combining a train equipment with grain trucks is a mystery, as well as how the SBU managed to hide drones there is also unknown. But the result was this. The first blow was delivered to the locomotive, after which the train began to lose speed and was stopped. The enemy destroyed most of the equipment without hindrance. Operation SPIDERWEB 2.0. Someone must answer for this. Okay, but we just don't have any other similar claims about this incident. It appears that all claims concerning what actually happened in this supposed SPIDERWEB 2.0 are variations of this. There's no video evidence. So, for example, ATPGEO. Now, I'm going to come to some extra evidence or some extra claims that I don't know where they came from. Operation Pavutina continues, says ATPGEO, which is Operation SPIDERWEB. In yet another stunning failure by Russian special services, Ukrainian forces allegedly executed a highly effective precision strike on a Russian military train. The attack resulted in the destruction of roughly a regiment-sized unit worth of equipment. The attack left the entire transport operation exposed and immobilized, with no effective resistance mounted in response, according to Russian Telegram. So again, that is generic. According to Russian Telegram, the strike was facilitated by a covert infiltration of grain hopper cars on the train, etc., etc. That is all just a rehash of what I just read to you. Then it says this, though. Now, I presume this has come from a Ukrainian Southern Forces Command claim, and I need to look into this, but there is some detail here. One railway locomotive, they claim the Russian losses were 1 railway locomotive, 13 tanks, 7 artillery systems, 103 units of automotive and armoured equipment, 10 fuel tank cars carrying an estimated 158 to 172,000 gallons of fuel. Russian Telegram claims the loss of the locomotive destroyed with tanks and dozens of armoured vehicles. For now, we wait for further details of the nature of this attack. So that was interesting. We, the original claim was 13 tanks and more than 100 units of armoured and automotive equipment. But we're not quite sure. It said the defence forces of southern Ukraine hit a locomotive with a column of enemy equipment. Okay, is that they've hit a column of enemy equipment and a locomotive? So with can sometimes be we hit that with that, and together it meant this. Okay, what I pointed out the next day was we definitely had this. So Ukrainian General Staff were reporting losses that would definitely indicate that those previously detailed losses did take place. So the General Staff seems to be in accordance with the Southern Forces Command. Now, as I said to you at the time, we were for the previous week before this day, and since that day, we had sort of 2 to 5 tanks being lost on a daily basis. The daily average is about 11 tanks. We had about 5-7 armoured troop carrying AFVs, so troop carrying armoured fighting vehicles. That went up to 52. So you're going from the daily average is about 21, I think, at the moment. We were seeing far fewer than that. We were seeing 5 to 7 on a daily basis consistently, shot up to 52 on the 7th, and then the day later both of these figures came back down. So something spiked on this day. 166 vehicles and fuel tanks also spiked. We were seeing below 100, around 100 and something, and then it's spiked up, it came back down, and that's gone up a little bit today. But generally speaking, that was the highest in the last week. In other words, these figures appear to be borne out by the Ukrainian General Staff stats. So it's not that these losses didn't take place, but it's whether Operation SPIDERWEB 2.0 took place. It's whether you had drones coming out of hoppers and destroying a locomotive full of equipment. And then we had this claim of firms data, absolute madness, another shocking failure. So this is a rehash of that Russian claim that we just saw, or supposedly Russian Telegram claim. Someone must be held accountable for this. Okay, on the map you can see a massive fire currently captured by satellites in the location of the strike of the Echelon. Now, annoyingly, this source doesn't put a geolocation, and I can't read any names here, but what I do notice is this at the top. And at the time of seeing this, and I showed this to you guys this morning, I think, or today, certainly in my live stream today, I showed this, and I was like, that really looks like the Aleshki Sands by the Dnipro River. So lo and behold, they're definitely, well, at least this image shows that there was some massive firms data. So firms records, this is the NASA satellites recording heat signatures. It was supposed to be for wildfires. That's why this technology was developed, to track wildfires around the world. It's been really useful for finding out what has been taking place in Ukraine. And then I was just looking around the internet and found this. It is true something is burning heavily between Brilivka and Veliki Kopani, and it's not refineries. SPIDERWEB 2.0, but on land using wagons. I don't need to mention what kind of paranoia will this spark between Russians. South is rail lifeline for many Russian units. So what we have here is the bottom of the Aleshki Sands, which are here. Okay, that's what these are. This is Kherson, Dnipryani, Novokhovka, Aleshki. There's Aleshki itself, and we have the Aleshki Sands, and then just below that on this track going up there. Now, that could be a railway going up there. It almost certainly is. Let's have a look on the actual map. So we are talking about here, the Aleshki Sands, and we are looking at this area. Now that does look to be the railway there coming up, as you can see just below the Aleshki Sands there. Let's go back to the satellite image there. If we make that a little bit larger, this is possibly a railway there. That does look to be a road, though. That's not a railway as far as I can see. So I think that is a road. but I am not 100% sure. It looks like this is the railway just here, which would indicate that the railway explosion would have, I mean, these are huge fires. So this looks much wider than a single, it's a much wider area than a single railway. So you could have lots of explosions going on here. I mean, a wildfire is much more likely for this. But there's no visual imagery of this. There is satellite data. But it's a massive set of firms' data going on there. I mean, there are some other places where there are issues going on around. But that is a sizable spread of heat right between the road and the railway line. Does that prove anything? Not really. Does it fit in with the claims? Marginally. I say marginally because the fire appears to touch the railway lines up there. That are the railway lines, but there are no railway lines in here. That's so you could have that as being there. Then we see this today. So yesterday, Defence Forces of the South reported that as a result of the destruction of railway locomotive, the invaders lost 13 tanks and up to 100 vehicles. According to Dnipro OSINT, images that show the consequences of the damage are visible on a track in the Zaporizhia region. I have no idea where this is, but some damage to a railway track could well mean a locomotive was taken out. I would imagine if you had the sort of damage whereby 100 bits of kit and 13 tanks were destroyed and all these wagons. So if we go back to the claim here, it's like 10 fuel tank cars carrying an estimated 158,000 to 172,000 gallons of fuel. If they burn up, right, you're not moving that train very easily. So if you get some satellite data that then comes out and suggests some damaged track, but you're not really seeing much else, I don't know. And also, I haven't geolocated that either. So I don't know. There's lots of bits of data that if you weren't really looking closely, you go, oh, right, that confirms that. That confirms, okay, yep, lots of fire, spiked in the general staff figures, Southern forces claiming all this destruction. But there's something that is missing as far as I am concerned. And so I'm going to leave you with this. Null Reports came out and said, and this was earlier today, about 7 hours ago, came out and said, I've decided to take down my earlier post about the reported strike on the locomotive and a column of Russian military equipment, as mentioned by Ukraine's Southern Defence Forces Communication Centre. After taking a closer look at the original wording, considering some helpful feedback, and noting the lack of visual evidence, it seems the claim might have been misrepresented. The report appeared to link the locomotive incident with the destruction of 13 tanks and over 100 vehicles, but those figures later show up in the general 24-hour enemy losses summary. So yes, a locomotive was mentioned as being hit, but there's no solid link to the other equipment losses, and there's no visual proof of such a large-scale strike either. Apologies for the mix-up. Okay, so it could have happened, but it could also have been two kind of separate incidents. So a locomotive being hit and then Southern forces being responsible for taking out an awful lot of stuff in different areas. And maybe this firm's data it could entail the destruction of equipment in different places around here. I don't know. There are options, but like we would expect, if the Ukrainians had done this on the back of hitting Crimea, blowing up having an explosion on the support of the Crimean bridge, or the Kerch bridge, SPIDERWEB 1.0, shooting down the Su-35, like these things have been huge and they've been shouted about. This has been shouted about more by people like me rather than the original people. There is no video evidence to support this, and we should expect it. This is a valid argument from silence, where you would expect there to be visual evidence because it always comes out when they do something amazing like this, and it hasn't come out so far. I think there's something a little bit weird going on. As someone here says, so where did the reports of drones in the Hopper's car originate? I can buy that SBU could get drones into Hopper cars, much like the SPIDERWEB. I was skeptical that they could then ensure those cars were attached to a military logistics train. I assume the Hopper cars were probably sitting somewhere on a siding and the drones were activated when the military train passed by, but the description of hopper cars opening up and drones flying out seems to be quite detailed. From where was that reporting? And that's part of the problem. You know, where did, as this person says, so where did this come from? Which is the kind of supposedly the Russian claim. We need to just be careful. The general staff, I'm fairly confident of their figures. Not all the time, but I'm fairly confident that they're going to be accurate, because they do have criteria for accepting evidence from the different units, and there was a spike. There definitely was a spike of lost equipment, and it appears that the Southern forces have made a claim that they are responsible for the destruction, but that could have come alongside the destruction of the train. Could just be a day where 13 tanks, you know, the enemy's losses amounted to 13 tanks and more than 100 units of armoured and automotive equipment. You know, so a column of enemy equipment with a locomotive. Who knows? It just could be that those are separate incidents. Just be careful, guys. It may have happened, and amazingly, you know, in a day or two, we might start getting video evidence of drones going and blowing up all this equipment on a train. But I don't know. I am, at the moment, a little bit skeptical, not of the overall losses. I broadly believe the general staff. So, you know, functionally, I guess it's the same, other than there isn't some big, as in the loss of equipment is the same, but there isn't some big PR win for the Ukrainians here with regard to a train full of stuff getting blown up all at once, and there being some amazing high-tech SPIDERWEB 2.0 type mission. Let me know what you think. I just wanted to do a corrective because I am absolutely about accuracy, and I will report things, but obviously, you know, and I was talking about grains of salt and, you know, being careful not to just completely believe everything that we want to believe. So I'm happy I did the caveats at the time, and hopefully this acts as a corrective if one is needed. Okay, that's enough from me. Take care. Speak soon.